Hello and welcome to Quarterlight, your car brochure channel, and in today's episode we have the Morris 1100 and 1300. Welcome back, and if you're new to Quarterlight, we're a car brochure channel here on YouTube looking at car brochures from around the world for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s. So if you think that might interest you as a car enthusiast or a car brochure collector, please consider subscribing. Anyway, back to today's episode. We're all the way back in 1969 for this Morris 1100 and Morris 1300 brochure. So let's have a look at this now. So here is today's brochure, and this one's dated June 1969. You can see at the top there the Morris 1300 and the Morris 1100 Mark II. When these cars were introduced, they were part of the British Motor Corporation, first introduced in, I do believe, 1963, so BMC back in those days, and it came to become a bit of a badge engineered line of cars. The cars as a whole, like the code name or the design name, was ADO 16 or BMC ADO 16. ADO just simply means the Amalgamated Design Office project number 16, and like I say, they became a bit of a badge engineered group of cars. Most famous ones, or the most well known, was the Morris 1100, Morris 1300, but of course we had Austin 1100, Austin 1300 very commonly, but we had other ranges, kind of like the middle class Wolseley 1100 and the Riley Kestrel, of course. And there was kind of like this top of the range, or seen as top of the range, the Vanden Ploegh Princess 1100. So there was various different cars in this, but like I said, this video is purely going to be looking at this brochure, which is featuring the Morris 1100 and Morris 1300. This is 1969, so by this stage it became British Leyland. I think BMC in this range kind of like ended in 68 to 74 was British Leyland. So in theory, if we turn this brochure over, we shouldn't be seeing any British Motoring Corp or BMC logos, and indeed we're now featuring the plug hole of doom, the little British Leyland badge. We turn this back again. But rather interesting, someone's kind of like written Austin WT 24227. I'm not sure what that code means, but obviously there was kind of like looking at the Austin version at the same time, whoever originally had this brochure by the looks of it. Very popular car, kind of like in some years became, the best-selling car in Britain. It was a very popular car because of how much space there were inside for such a small vehicle. What we'll do, we'll zoom in on some of these images and then we'll start looking through the brochure itself. And at the top here, it's kind of like showing pictures of the three different models that this brochure is featuring. So we've got top left hand corner, the 4-door version. Middle is going to be the Traveller, the kind of the most practical version, and then the 2-door to the right there. And like I say, that unusual script, Austin WT 24227. You know what them numbers would refer to, please let me know. But like I say, I'm thinking someone was probably looking at the Austin version at the same time. And the main image themselves, or itself, is a 4-door version. Interesting actually this. I'll zoom in, but what you'll kind of like notice on here, I don't know if you can see it straight away, but it looks like a photo of this particular Morris, but it looks like it's been touched up as well to highlight certain things, and I'll zoom in just to show you what I mean. Particularly around the chrome around the windows look like they've been highlighted, and you can really notice it on the little catch there for the Quarterlight, how it's kind of like, I don't know if it's been drawn or just been drawn around at some point, and kind of like I say, these rear seats are highlighted much more than they would normally be seen. And again, you can see it in that door catch, how it's kind of like almost looks like it's been drawn around. So kind of like a very interesting little image there. And if we look at the back, I don't know if we can notice those rear tail lights. Now them rear tail lights, you also see that same tail light on the FX4 London taxis, interestingly enough. But overall, I quite like the design of these. I just think they're an interesting vehicle, and you know, if you always see the little images of England in the 60s, any sort of film or kind of like clip, you always see these driving around because they were such extremely popular cars. And I kind of like think this front bumper as well looks like it's been drawn around possibly or highlighted in some way. However they did that in the 60s, I'm not 100% sure, but interesting. You also notice on the Morris versions you got these kind of like straight grills. I think the Austin version was kind of like more of a wavy line. And then, for example, if you look at things like the MG version around about this time, a much smaller grille at the front there. And then if you look at something like a Riley Kestrel, that's got even smaller grille. So they kind of like change little features on the various models, but overall just badge engineering. Then we turn over the first page and we get some lovely images of this particular red 4-door example entitled The New Morris 1300 More Advanced Than Ever. Of course, we'll zoom in on these images and some of this text, and we'll certainly notice that this particular red example here, similar sort of treatment. It almost looks like it's been drawn, and then a real picture at the back there, but I'll show you what I mean when I zoom in. Well, now obviously the people behind is an actual picture, but the front image of the car almost looks like a drawing. I'm not sure how they get this effect, whether it's a real picture and then they go along and then they, you know, recolor it and re-highlight it. I don't know, but obviously it doesn't look quite right. But as you can see it on the number plate there's something a little bit off about it, and you know, it's way too bright. It's like it's something you see in a comic book. So I think that's very interesting how they do that particular effect. Similar sort of effect on this interior picture as well. The wheel looks like a just normal wheel, but the rest of it looks like an actual drawing, but beautifully done. I love how they've done all the reflections, and I particularly like these red exterior, red seats, red door cards. Much nicer than the drab grey you get today. I'm not going to read it all because the brochure review will get too long, but it starts by saying here's the latest version of Motoring's most advanced, fast-selling car. It's been restyled and its own distinctive front grille, giving it even stronger claims to being one of the most attractive cars on the road. That's quite a statement. But it's what's under the bonnet that's the big news. The BMC A-Series 1275cc power unit has been fitted, giving superb all-round performance, brisk acceleration and quick getaways. Powerful brakes, discs at the front, supplement this super performance. All the seats have been redesigned and have been contact surface trimmed in hard-wearing Nick backed vinyl. Not a fan of vinyl, but there we go. It goes on to say they are extremely comfortable, allowing you to relax while still holding you firmly in place. The new Morris 1300 still has the same engineering features that helped to make its predecessor, the Morris 1100, a world beater. Front wheel drive with its superb road holding, the space making transverse engine, the smooth stability of Hydrolast suspension. Illustrated is the 4-door Super Deluxe saloon. A little bit of a look at the images, you know, featuring these big boots. Have a look at another door with that rather nice little docket in the door card there, and a nice little image of the steering wheel and the front speedo. Very nicely done. And then if we go right to the bottom, there's a little bit of a zoom in of that front end. But overall, I mean, the beauty of that front wheel drive layout is the benefit of much more space inside, and I think that's why it became such a good selling car. The next page is looking at the two doors, so let's have a look at these images. So we've got a little bit of an image of the two-door one. Again, I think some of the little parts of this Forza have been highlighted, or is it a whole drawing? It's very confusing really. I'll show you what I mean. That front number plate obviously has been blurred out to be not a real number plate. And this kind of like mixture of a photograph and not a photograph. I think overall, I think it's a picture that's been just had various parts like touched up. And again, I guess a little bit of a different interior now. We've got this kind of like centre little gauge and a little bit of wood around there, so maybe this is the deluxe version as well, but you can see how much like space it is to put, you know, a little bit of a parcel shelf there on there for puts lots of little odds and ends, and then we got this little spindly little gear lever there, and then more little tiny images. Again, we get that little bit of an interior shot. What's it telling us? The fascia of the Mark II Deluxe, so it is the Deluxe, is centrally placed, styling in keeping with the general appointment of the interior, and contains all the necessary instruments and switches for the satisfactory running of the car. So I guess the 1100 had that centre speedo, the 1300 had more of that, like sort of like a different speedo. It says mechanically these cars are the same as the 4-door models. The 1300 Super Deluxe version of the car includes the full width fascia as fitted in the 4-door Super Deluxe saloons, nick-back vinyl seats on contact surfaces, etc, etc. So that little dash and speedo is going to be the for the 1300s, whether you got a 2-door or a 4-door. And then you get these interesting models. The Morris 1300 Traveller, or it'll be the most interesting, so let's zoom in on these ones as well, and certainly I would say the most practical. So we get this rather nice image of this 1300 Traveller in motion, and I guess it also gives an indication, you know, back then the cars were much smaller. You can see how the guy is sitting in that driving seat, it looks much bigger, and then you see these huge, ridiculously large cars today. But like I say, certainly a much more practical car than the 4-door and the 2-door, because you got this nice bit of a hatchback at the back there, almost like a small estate car in many ways, and you get this rather interesting kind of like wood effect going down the side. I actually think these are probably the most attractive looking of these particular cars as well. Nice little colour combination on this particular example, but you can see kind of like the hatch at the back there. I love the interior on these, the colour on the outside and that red interior really sets it off and really kind of like makes me think of like the late 60s, early 70s. And it tells us the new Morris 1300 Traveller multi-purpose motoring and the smooth comfort of the 1300 saloon pile everything for a lively weekend or long holiday into this Traveller. There's seating for 5 and a spacious rear platform to accommodate everything in safety. This perfect family carry-all and long-distance tourer has super easy access through the special full-width counterbalanced rear door. No wheel arches or transmission hump obstruct the floor area. Also available for export markets only with a 1098cc power pack. The 1100 Mark II Traveller includes most of the features of its 1300 counterpart. Then we get some really nice little images here of showing how practical it is. Like it says, no wheel arch intrusion, so it makes a big space inside. Fold those seats back and you got an even bigger space. No hump transmission tunnel because it's front wheel drive. So overall, a very clever little example. And here it's showing in rather amazing sort of like double bed form, because you can even fold down the front seats. And indeed it shows a lady kind of like reading a book at night, going to sleep in there. So a very practical and clever little car overall. Interesting, we don't really see front seats folding today. I don't know what that reason is. I mean, particularly if you had to carry like any sort of long wood or anything, that would be great, wouldn't it? Don't tend to see that front seats folding these days though. And then, you know, little page saying, where does all the space come from, you know? Front wheel drive wasn't obviously as common as it is today, but allowing it to have much more space. Let's have a look at some of these images. So we got this very 60s little image of kind of like 4 adults and a child packed in there. Everyone's still looking reasonably happy there. Again, a really very much a 60s image, but you know, I quite like these older brochures for these little images like this. Yeah, and then, you know, showing the differences of positioning the engine for, you know, front wheel drive. I'm presuming this is the 1300. Interesting, kind of like, I don't know, you would say this is a bit of a design flaw, but you know, this is your fan and your fan blade, so air is obviously coming through the front, so not cooling it quite as efficiently, you could argue. I don't know, did they have any overheating problems on these? I'm not sure, but like I say, positioning the engine like this and making it a front wheel drive car makes much more space for the people inside. And then we get some little images showing it's available as an automatic, little guy driving, obviously no headrests on there. You can certainly see how low that seat back is towards cars of the 70s, very low seat backs. Practicality of, you know, putting your, well, I hope they're not just going to put the baby in there, I presume they're just going to put the pushchair in there, but showing that practicality of the traveller. And also showing these front disc brakes. It's actually worth zooming in on that little road sign to see where he's actually travelling to. Sadly not, the picture isn't clear enough to actually see where he's travelling to. And then we get this unusual claim, obviously talking about the hydroelastic suspension. So smooth you can pour your coffee at 60. Got to look at some of these images. We've got this little bit of an image of this Morris at speed again. Kind of the number plate blurred out there, but it's obviously going round a corner. We do get this image of how this hydroelastic suspension works, and then quite literally we do get a couple of ladies in the 60 pouring a cup of coffee at 60 miles per hour. Not sure I would really advise that. Certainly today you would never get that, because you get someone burning somebody and then, you know, you'd have some kind of lawsuit, but an interesting claim nevertheless. And then you get this very wordy, detailed specification, and certainly you can see that difference in car brochures. 60s brochures, you kind of like think you're a lot more mechanically minded, so they go into a lot more detail, which is certainly interesting, so we'll zoom in on those specifications. Now, we're not going to have time in this brochure to look through all the specifications or read them out, but certainly at any point you see anything you particularly want to have a look at, you can pause the screen. Starts off telling you about the 1300 and the 1100, the exact cubic capacities, torque, etc, etc. So if you do want to read that, please do pause that screen. If we go down the page a little bit further, it goes into detail about the fuel system, the lubrication system, the ignition system, and the cooling system. Again, if you want to look at that in detail, please pause that screen now. If we go down further, it starts talking about the chassis, so the transmission, 4-speed gearbox, all synchromesh, the steering, and you know how far from turn to turn it is. Again, if you want to pause that screen, you can do. Suspension, brakes. See if we can get that all in one shot. So there we go, the suspension and brakes. Again, if you want to pause that screen, you can do. And then the road wheels and the electrical system with all the little bits and pieces you get on, whether it's, you know, like it's talking about the horn, so a twin horn on the Deluxe and Traveller, etc, etc. Again, you can pause that screen if you want to see all those details. The instruments, you know, extra instruments on the Deluxe and the Traveller. Moving down, the coach work for the saloon. If I can zoom in, hopefully I can. No, I don't think I'm going to get that all in one shot because it's going into so much detail. So the coach work of the saloon. Again, if you want to pause that screen now, and I'll move the screen down so we can see the rest of it. There we go, and that's the rest of the coach work for the saloon. So you can see how very wordy this is and very kind of like complicated it is to read out. Obviously, newer brochures, you just got little like check marks which particular model had what, but here, and very often in the 60s, just all written out. And actually this is the continuation of the saloon. It still goes into more detail before telling you about the optional extras for the saloon. So you can have that automatic transmission, electrically heated rear window, and reclining front seats. Kind of like things you would take for granted now, of course. Again, now it's talking about the coach work for the Traveller. Again, we're going to have 2 bites at this, so if you want to pause the screen to see this top half, you can do. I'll move the screen down now. To see the rest of the coach work for the Traveller. Again, in a lot of detail. Let's see what optionals, extras you can get for the Traveller. So you get auto transmission front seats and reclining squabs, fold down to make a sleeping compartment. Long in conjunction with rear seats, so it looks like that folding down to actually get that sleeping compartment was actually an optional extra for the Traveller, which actually I thought that was standard, but I guess not. And then it talks about the export availability and then optional equipment for export at extra cost. So lots of little extras you can get for the export model versions as well. And then on the back page is just a dimensions page. It doesn't really work well for camera, but it will zoom in at this little British Leyland badge, I think. We've got the little British Leyland badge and British Leyland Motoring Corporation, Austin Morris Division, Longbridge, Birmingham, England, publication 2457G, and the date on that far right hand corner at the bottom there, 6/69. So there we go, the little Morris 1100 and 1300. What a fantastic little car, and I do love these 60s brochures. If you've got any memories of the Morris 1100 or 1300 or any of the other badge engineered models, please let me know in the comments. Always interesting to read real world comments. But thank you once again for watching. Please do like and subscribe if you've not done it already, and we'll see you very soon. Take care and goodbye.